Hey guys, my name is Devontae, and I sacrificed my time so you don't have to. So you're gonna get a double upload tonight, okay? Like, this is gonna be kind of close in proximity to the AEW Dynamite review that I'm gonna do tonight. And yes, I absolutely will do the Dynamite review tonight. I just want to talk about this really quick because it got me thinking. Like, I just put out a community post, maybe like at this point, I want to say 15 minutes ago, where I talked about this match where Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, they had this one-on-one match. It was like the same week. It was the fallout from the No Mercy 2002 match they had with Edge and Rey Mysterio. Check that match out also if you're super young. It's a classic match. It's one of the best tag team matches, if not the greatest tag team match in North American history. One of the greatest tag team matches in professional wrestling history, but in particular in North American history. It's an amazing match. Well, to be fair, I mean, if you're like over the age of 25, I'm pretty sure you've seen the match already, so I don't really have to talk about it. But during this match, it was a competition. It was a straight up legitimate combat sports competition that I think even the purest of UFC fans would have actually very much enjoyed. Because the thing with Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle is that when they went out there and they wrestled, it is the closest thing to a legitimate sports type of deal. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it felt... Yeah, it's obviously a sports entertainment. Yeah, obviously professional wrestling is scripted and all this other kind of stuff. But when you watch them wrestle, it felt like, okay, yeah, that's a sport. That's a damn sport. And to a lesser degree, I would say that the mentality of a Kurt Angle and a Chris Benoit, and I'm setting this up, so bear with me for a second. The mentality of a Kurt Angle and a Chris Benoit when having their matches, and that's why I love Bret Hart, and that's why I love Owen Hart, and that's why I love a Dynamite Kid, or Bryan Danielson, for an example, or to a lesser degree, a Zack Sabre Jr., a Dean Malenko, or any of these technical wrestling guys, is that they make everything feel like a chess match. And just to get back to my point with Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit when they had their match, I always felt like the mentality going into their matches was legitimately, like, I can feel it. You can tell that their mentality was, you are not going to outdo me tonight. You're just not going to outdo me. You're not going to outdo me. For every spot you do, I'm going to outdo your spot. For every counter you call, I'm going to call a better counter. For every kick out that's going to happen at the near 3 count mark, I'm going to do one that's just as close as a near fall. You could tell the mentality of their matches, even though it's scripted, even though they're calling spots, the mentality in their brains for a Kurt Angle and a Chris Benoit was, I am going to legitimately outdo every spot that you do in that match. And that's what made the matches feel so competitive and make it feel so great. I just love shit like that. That's why I'm such a huge fan of technical wrestling or Smash Mouth or any of those other kind of styles, because it wasn't just going out there and just doing bullshit for the sake of doing bullshit. It was going out there and there was a legitimate competition. Like, those are the kind of matches where it's like, okay, cool, I don't need a storyline for the match. You can just go out there and have a legitimate competition. It felt like amateur wrestling. They really got you engaged into it. And it's been it's been well over 20 years now. And I can go back and watch Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, and I watch their matches like every other week because I'm just such a damn mark for those two. But it was an interview that I got finished watching directly after that. It's an RF Video Vault clip. I'll actually leave the link down in the description box. I think it's actually kind of an interesting read. It was actually from like an older. It says like it came out 2 years ago, but I remember seeing this shit on YouTube like 13, 14 years ago. They just re-uploaded it. Where Kurt Angle was talking about working with Chris Benoit, because I was curious to kind of see how Kurt Angle always felt about working. I think I've seen it before, but like just kind of, just revisit it. And it was actually one excerpt that I didn't pay attention to, or I don't remember hearing him talk about, and he was discussing the match with him and Chris Benoit and their steel cage match, one of the best Raw matches of all time. It happened in 2001, but that was around the time also, just a little bit of a side note, Chris Benoit in like May and June of 2001, Jericho too, but more particular Chris Benoit, that in my opinion, from just June in general, like late May, June, there's no surprise Benoit had a broken neck. Benoit had a 2 out of 3 falls match at Judgment Day, including a ladder match within that. He had a TLC match, he had a steel cage match, he had a triple threat match. All of this happened within the month of May and June. He had the 2 classic matches with Austin. There's no surprise the man broke his goddamn neck, and that happened between May and June. But a little bit of a side note, but it was a point where Kurt Angle was talking about Chris Benoit and his match and their steel cage match, where Austin was on commentary, right? And he was saying, okay, like the most dangerous spots in the match wasn't the things that you think it was. Like, if you guys remember, one of the most famous spots, arguably one of the most replayed spots in WWE history, is Kurt Angle hitting the moonsault off the steel cage. It's a very, very memorable spot. Angle says straight up that wasn't the most dangerous spot of the match. The most dangerous spot of the match is something that you guys don't even remember. And I remember it clear as day, but like the way he painted it out, he tried to make it sound minuscule, which I guess in the grand scheme of things it is, compared to like the moonsault of the steel cage, which is iconic. Benoit gave Angle, so like Angle's trying to climb out of the cage and Benoit stops him. And the way he stops him is that he gives him a German suplex off the middle of the rope as Angle's trying to climb out of the cage, and Angle lands on the back of his head, which I don't think Angle was like too disoriented. I think, you know, I'm obviously hurt, but I don't think it did that much damage to Angle. Maybe I can't say that. I mean, Angle did start his WWE career out with a broken freaking neck, so I mean, I'm pretty sure it could have maybe exasperated it, but you know, nothing too damaging. I mean, he did wrestle Shane McMahon like a couple of weeks later, you know, at King of the Ring, so go figure, right? But he said that Austin was actually looking at him the entire time, looking at the match the entire time, and he kind of exaggerated a little bit. He was like, Austin was so shocked that he didn't speak for the rest of the commentary. Now he did. I remember the match clear as day. Austin did talk throughout the rest of the commentary, but I get his point. He said that Austin didn't want to work with them because he felt that they were too dangerous, which again is a little bit of an exaggeration because Austin already worked with both of those guys prior to this match happening, and he wrestled with them after this match, had 2 full-on programs with both guys, had pay-per-view matches with both guys on consecutive months. I mean, he wrestled Benoit at King of the Ring along with Jericho. You know, he wrestled Angle at SummerSlam, at Unforgiven. You could throw an Invasion if you want to. So it's like, yeah, he exaggerated a little tiny bit, but it was a point where he notated and he was like, the spots that we did in that match were considered dangerous. And it's just crazy and mind-boggling to think that Kurt Angle said this is like maybe 2009, 2008, a little bit after Benoit died is when he did this interview. And he's saying in 2001, a spot like that was considered incredibly dangerous, and he didn't blame Austin if he didn't want to work with them because he felt that, and Kurt Angle actually did feel that, they weren't really necessarily telling a story in the steel cage. He felt that they were just doing stuff for the sake of a pop. And it just blew my fucking mind to think that in 2001, that match was considered incredibly dangerous. Don't get it twisted. It was a hard-hitting match, and yeah, maybe you can call it dangerous. I guess the German suplex spot and the moonsault kind of, you know, I guess that kind of verifies that. But my point being is, right, a spot like that is considered doing stuff for the sake of a pop. That's just mind-boggling to me, because you consider all the things that are done in professional wrestling today, and a spot like that is considered dangerous. And it made me think about all the years prior to all that stuff happening in 2001 with Benoit and Angle, all the stuff prior to the TLC matches, which in my opinion, compared to what you see now, and it has more to do with the superstars and how good they were in the ring and how safe they were for the most part. Because even Angle was saying, I think he actually said it on one of his shoots. Like, you know, I forgot the name of the show he does with Conrad Thompson. I forgot the name of it. But I think he mentioned about Benoit, like, Benoit was super safe. Like the only thing that was stiff about Benoit were, you know, obviously, you know, the chops to the chest. But outside of that, Benoit was incredibly safe to work with. I think he said it in this interview too, but I'm not sure. But it's just crazy to me because I think about the years prior to that, and it's like, damn, bro. Like, imagine someone... And I talked about this not too long ago, like Bob Orton doing a superplex off the turnbuckle. I bet people back then thought that was incredibly dangerous, and I don't want to work with a Bob Orton. I don't want to work with a Paul Orndorff because they're doing superplexes off the top rope. That's fucking insane, right? I can only imagine how people looked at New Japan Pro Wrestling back in, say, 1982 and seeing the stuff that Tiger Mask was doing. Which, yes, in my opinion, is probably like 20 years ahead of its time and pretty much set the precedent for what you were going to get with the indie circuit going forward, because in the end of the day, that's what Tiger Mask was. Tiger Mask is the godfather of indie wrestling for the most part, right? Him and Dynamite Kid both. But I look at all those things, and it's just going forward. I can only imagine how people thought about those spots back in the days. And then you look at now, and it's like, damn, we really have capped off the spots and how dangerous things can be. And it really makes you wonder, have we actually gone too far in professional wrestling in regards to the dangerous spots? I mean, you have celebrities nowadays. For a celebrity to get over, they have to be a Logan Paul jumping off of a turnbuckle, going through an announcement table, for fuck's sakes. You have Bad Bunny, one of the biggest musicians in the world currently right now. In order for him to get over, he's a goddamn musician, and he's doing crazy shit. He's taking bumps through tables. The dude is doing a Canadian destroyer in 2004 was one of the most damnedest things I've ever seen in my life. When I seen Petey Williams do it for the first time, I lost my shit. I still remember in 2004, it was probably around like August, September, right when I just made it to the 7th grade. And I seen Petey Williams do a goddamn Canadian destroyer. I lost my ever-loving shit because I've never seen that before. It was a front flip power driver. What the actual insane fuck is that? And now you have Bad Bunny doing a fucking Canadian destroyer. You have guys doing springboards out of the ring into a Canadian destroyer. Stuff like that is just insane to me when you think about it. And it's just crazy because I hear a guy like Kurt Angle say like, hey man, like the stuff that me and Benoit were doing early on, I don't really consider that telling a story. I consider that just doing spots for the sake of doing spots for the sake of a pop. And it's just like, fuck, how far have we gone? Like, we are just completely gone, like alienated from what professional wrestling really is. Because if that is considered just doing stuff for the sake of a pop, and they recognize this, Benoit and Kurt, they had to recognize this. And obviously as time went on, the spots that they did were well more intricate. Like, they started to more so amateur wrestle, you know what I mean? They started to hit more of their signatures, and they weren't too crazy like that. But that's the point that I'm making. The stuff that I'm saying they weren't too crazy into doing anymore, that stuff right there is considered like that stuff right there is considered like incredibly dangerous. And it's like, where, like, I'll put it to you this way. All the stuff that they were doing at that time, right? All the crazy stuff they were doing in their steel cage matches, all the stuff that they were doing, you know, prior to that, and you can include some of the other wrestlers on the roster at the time. If that stuff was considered dangerous and not telling a story, then what the hell is today considered then? Huh? Because here's my thing, and we can actually contest this in the comment section if you want to. I personally think the wrestlers of today having a standard one-on-one match, I'll focus, you can talk about WWE if you want to, because I'll put them in that category too, but particularly focusing like on the indie circuit or AEW, for an example, a regular standard, no gimmicks, one-on-one match. I would argue a standard one-on-one match for your stereotypical wrestler today is more dangerous than the TLC matches back then. I remember hearing Jim Cornette say something along the lines of this. I can't remember exactly verbatim, but I think he said something along the lines of, I will much rather take 20 power drivers in a row from a Jerry Lawler before I let one of these wrestlers today put me through a table. Think about that for a second. You would much rather put your neck on the line 20 times in a row before allowing a wrestler to just take a simple, give you a simple bump through a table. I talked about this with Kenny Omega and MJF a couple of days ago when I notated the fact that, hey man, they're going out there and they're just doing shit, like just crazy shit. But in my opinion, if you look at the match, in my opinion, I think Kenny Omega was kind of careless in some spots. I kind of think Kenny Omega wasn't really up to par in some spots. And that has more to do with the wear and tear they've done to their body. Now, remember, Kenny Omega, as far as being on top, as far as being that guy, would you argue that it hasn't been a decade yet? I would not argue that Kenny Omega has been seen in this light. It hasn't been a decade yet. It's maybe close to a decade, but I don't think it has been a decade yet. It took Kurt Angle probably close to 20 years before he put himself into the spot right now where he can barely move around as much as he used to anymore. It took him 20 years damn near to put himself in that spot, and they were doing spots like that. Kenny Omega, he's barely 10 years as a top guy, and look at where he's at right now. He can't even wrestle the same way he used to wrestle in the past, according to you guys said he's so good. You guys, I heard some people in the comments, oh, he's not the cleaner anymore. I wonder why. have we gone too far in professional wrestling? For a guy like Kurt Angle to say something along the lines of, me and Chris Benoit were doing stuff for the sake of a pop. If that was for the sake of a pop in 2001, what do we call today? Have we gone too far in professional wrestling? When does it end in professional wrestling? When do we actually stop for a second and look at the things that we're doing and saying to ourselves, why are we doing this and why does it matter? Because at least with Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit, you can make an argument that, hey, this is just kind of building up to Austin and, you know, the King of the Ring match. You know, this is kind of the, at least at that point in time, this is kind of the final nail in the coffin before we revisit this a year later in the Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit trilogy. Well, I guess you could say, I wouldn't even say trilogy. I guess a trilogy in the sense that it happened after the third match, because the first match obviously was WrestleMania, then you had Backlash, then you had Judgment Day. When does it end? Have we gone too far in professional wrestling? I want to get some opinions, discuss this in the comment section below. It just popped up on my radar, and I just really wanted to talk about this because it just blew my mind when I seen this interview with Kurt Angle talking about this. And it's just like, man, wow, we have gone so far that you have wrestlers back in the day seeing stuff like this is crazy. I can only imagine what they think nowadays, man. I can only imagine what they think nowadays. But with that being said, don't forget, folks, I will be coming out with the Dynamite review later on tonight. I just really wanted to talk about this because it was really on my mind. I didn't want to let it go. I wanted to get some conversation started on this conversation and this conversation. So let's do that. Comment section down below. As always, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces, P. Ice.